Hello and welcome to another Coffee with Developers. Today I'm super excited to have somebody very early in the days because he's over in the US and a person that you probably might not have heard of, but you have heard of the thing that he did. And that thing is WebMCP. It's been all over the place right now. And I'm very happy to go back to the person that kind of came up with it, but we're going to talk about the history for it for a while. So let's bring up the stage Alex Nahas. How are you doing, Alex?
Good. How are you, Chris?
I'm good. Just basically set everything up right now, so the recording works. So we're very happy about that. Now, WebMCP, you worked for Amazon at some time ago, like just a few weeks ago, I guess. And I guess you came up with the need for WebMCP there. Is that correct? Or did you?
Yeah.
What was the idea behind it?
Yeah. So I would say MCP was kind of taking Amazon by storm about like 8 months ago, 9 months ago. It kind of had to hit the startup scene, kind of hit the people were getting really excited about it. But then it turned out to like solve a different problem at larger companies. That problem was like the many-to-many relationships of internal services, and like how do we talk and orchestrate between services? How do we do that in a safe way, right? Service accounts, all this sort of thing was kind of a part of the course. If you wanted another team to consume your API, you needed to give them an SDK and version it and all these things. And it really stalled and slowed cross-team integrations to a halt. If anyone's ever worked at a large company, you've probably dealt with this sort of thing. But MCP, the great thing about MCP was that it's a dynamic client. These models can call these tools dynamically at runtime, and you don't really need hard versioning contracts between services. So that was kind of what people were excited about. There was all these, these applications and ideas that really wouldn't have worked beforehand that were now possible because you could, if you wanted to root cause like a faulty financial transaction across many different internal services and reconcile different sources of truth, you could do that now because you could have one agent call all these different things. If they exposed MCP servers and then pump out what it believed to be the root cause of that faulty financial transaction. And that was the initial excitement internally at Amazon. But that was really only possible for developers because you had to get API keys from all these internal MCPs or use like our federated auth system to get the session token for these different things and then embed them in the request. It was very configuration heavy. There wasn't like a lot of options if you were a non-developer, and we had these large documents internally for non-developers to try to get started with these things. But we did have a Chrome extension in the side, and people were asking, like, how do I use MCP? Non-technical people that just wanted to ask an agent to turn their notes into Jira tickets, right? And this sort of thing seemed like much more difficult than it needed to be. Like every team was trying to solve this independently. And that's what the idea for WebMCP came, embed an MCP server inside of the client JavaScript, and then have the client actually be the extension, either as like an agent itself or a bridge to a local client that can call these tools on the page. So.
Okay, can you give us a quick overview what WebMCP is and what it actually allows you to do? Like a very much a 10 mile high explanation that I don't have to do then.
Yeah, for sure. So WebMCP, and this is a problem we're dealing with right now because there's like 4 different implementations of WebMCP. Mine was the Chrome extension version, with which you worked over. It was literally the JavaScript, TypeScript MCP SDK running inside of the context of the browser, and then an extension talking to it, and they communicated over a custom transport post message. But WebMCP is basically like tools, so just JavaScript functions with some like syntax over like semantic syntax over them to tell the model like, hey, this is what this function does. These are the arguments and what each of these mean. And if you wanted to call this is like how you would do it. And that's what a tool is. And WebMCP is essentially just a collection of a bunch of these tools exposed to an agent running inside of a page. There's different mechanisms for how to get there, but basically making a website accessible and callable by agents in like a deterministic way.
And there's an imperative version, like as parts of attributes on HTML, and the declarative version, which is like a JavaScript functionality or TypeScript functionality that you embed in the code of your application, right?
Yeah, exactly. And the declarative API is something that's pretty new. It was proposed recently in an issue, and then I wrote an implementation of it as a polyfill initially for some testing, and now the guys from Chrome have a slight variation of that implementation. But yeah, exactly. It's kind of, you can almost think of it like ARIA. You tag your HTML with tool name and tool description, and then it pops up in the context of the model as a JSON schema. And when the model calls that tool name with its arguments, then it actually submits that form on the user's behalf.
And you can also write the rules, which like in the description, the tool description can say like that's a password that needs at least 40 characters, or that's a zip code that allows for alphanumerical things, not only numbers, these kind of things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So the idea behind it, what I find fascinating, is like right now it seems like to me that the relationship of agents and the web is predatory. We basically have like agents coming, disguise themselves as browsers, simulate clicks and fill in things to get through it and simulate a human. Whereas like this is incredibly wasteful, because in essence, if I know that an agent comes, I could just give him the data. So that's what WebMCP does, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's a way to, like you said, I mean, there's a very standoffish relationship between website owners, especially those who don't want to be scraped or don't want to be automated, and the people who have a vested interest in, providing automations and integrations on behalf of their users. But WebMCP is, a contract that says, okay, basically, we know that browser automation via agents is coming, but here is a way that we can still be in the loop. We can still provide a contract for you to interact with our website without giving you the entire keys to the castle. So we like to think of it as like almost an alternative for DOM parsing, screenshot, simulated clicks. A website supports WebMCP, that can be the contract that the agent uses to interact with that page.
I mean, we had similar things. We had RSS as an alternative to HTML. We had like OEmbed, these kind of things. We always tried to actually make micro formats. We tried to enhance our HTML to give an API to machines to read them. But all of them basically died really quickly, and nobody bothered to actually do something with them. Do you think it was a lack of standardization, or do you think it was just a matter of like it's easier to scrape than to actually think about these alternative formats?
Yeah, it's a good question. You've been around the web much longer than I have, so I might not have the most informed opinion on this. But I mean, as an RSS enthusiast myself, like I'm maybe a little bit biased. I like RSS. I like using RSS, feed readers. But yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to just probably ease of use. It's easier if there's a very easy service, third party that provides scraping, that I think maybe people would just use that. But yeah, I don't know. What's your opinion on, do you see the similarities between something like RSS and WebMCP in its current state?
I do. And I think also what I love is that it's standardized, that it's actually a W3C proposal as well, and not just like somebody else doing it. Like other formats were out there. Micro formats, for example, were never standardized. They were just an idea and an own wiki, to say. The problem that I see with it, and I'm very happy that Google now started actually implementing a preview of it. But whenever something like that came out and we gave it out to the world, we just basically got stuck at these boundaries when it's like, okay, right now to try it out, you have to have Canary, you have to turn it on and a special setting in the settings, and you have to install an extension in the browser to do it. Like we always have this period where we want people to play with it, but they don't want to put the effort in unless it's there. RSS is a great example. When Google Reader was a big thing, or when Netscape still had a sidebar that showed RSS content, like then people were like embracing it. But if there's an extra step to get into it, then it gets tricky for people to go there. So how do you think with WebMCP we can avoid that kind of drop off of people's excitement after a few weeks if it's hard to actually use it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the biggest thing is because it's like pretty much an order of magnitude better than anything that exists for what people are trying to accomplish right now. if you're trying to make your website more accessible for agents, there's just nothing that really exists right now. A lot of people are doing screenshots or parsing the accessibility tree. And I talked to a team at a big lab the other week, and they're creating simulated machine learning, reinforcement learning environments that, like for Reddit, right? But they'll make a clone of it so they can train their models so it can click around and get better at interacting with this website. But WebMCP bypasses all of this need for the models to improve by just letting the developer provide accessibility for it. So I think that's one thing. I mean, if you see, I don't know if you've been following like the Claude bot or OpenClaw site, the hype, but there's so much browser automation there, and that's the biggest limiting factor right now for these integrations to work reliably, is for them to automate different websites reliably. So I think that's one thing. And the second thing would be the safety aspect. I think similar to what Cloudflare is doing with bot IDs and things like this, I think websites are going to see websites saying like, hey, if you don't only interact with the WebMCP tools we declare, we're not going to support your browser or your browser agent, or we're going to blacklist your AI Chrome extension, which is something you see LinkedIn doing now with these agentic extensions. So I think those two things.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because agents.md was another quasi-standard or attempt to actually make that thing work. And it feels like, yeah, if it's not backed by a standardization body and I cannot actually integrate it into my enterprise environment because it's just a nice to have, and I don't know if the spec changes under me every 2 weeks, then people will not embrace it as quickly. I think there's also a monetary factor, right? I mean, for somebody who's actually wants to provide agentic access to their site, it means a lot less traffic than like agents scraping and taking screenshots of your stuff. And I guess for end users, it means they don't burn through their tokens as fast because you only access a certain amount of data from a website rather than guessing your way in and then getting that 2 paragraphs that you want. Did you see some success stories and some numbers there already that people are like, oh my God, I don't actually use as much as I used to before?
Oh yeah, and I have, if you want to put it in the show notes, I have a Chrome DevTools MCP fork that calls WebMCP tools, and it's about an 80 to 90% token reduction over the screenshot DOM parsing approach if you want to take action on the page. So I mean, that's one thing, and there's a lot of benefits to that beyond just token efficiency, but like the model's understanding of your application, you have a lot more control over. If you look at like, I don't know, a 3D visualization graph, right? There's so much hidden context as to like how to interact with this page, right? Maybe you use the mouse in a certain way to expand and contract the visualization or things like this. And a model that's, just looking at a canvas and can only interact with screenshots and simulating clicks, there's just not much it can do, even with, all the tools. But giving it like programmatic, control over this application gives you a lot more flexibility to automate these kind of applications, which is just not something that exists right now for the tools that we have.
Well, it feels like a REST API on top of your application that just basically gives access for the data there. So if you have a form where you need to set 5 filters to get the 5 results and click 3 times, that would be very expensive for an agent to do and also error prone. Whereas like if you just tell the agent, here's the endpoint and here's the information and request it, then you could do it that way, right?
Yeah, the nice thing about WebMCP is that you're already talking from the existing authorization context of the page. You don't need to spin up a new infrastructure project for an MCP server and then implement OAuth. You can just use whatever authorization that you use currently and wrap those endpoints client side with WebMCP tools.
So you're in that authentication model already. How do we prevent that from outside access? Like, do we have a course verification, or what? How do we do that?
So the model can only take action on the tools that it's exposed to. So if you want to, something like, I think this is another reason this WebMCP is needed is if you want to give a model access to your, automate your website right now, it can usually has the ability to run scripts, which means it can run any fetch command from the context of your body. But if it only has access to WebMCP tools, it can only call the actions that you explicitly, or the website owner explicitly exposes to this agent. So if you want to say add to cart and you want to say list cart items, but you don't want to say checkout cart, that's okay. The model can only take those two actions, even if they're doing it under your authenticated session. They still can't take more destructive action or more action than you give them. And that goes along with like, if you have like role-based access control implemented on your front end, or just in your back end with, against your session, the model inherits those same things. So you get kind of like if you're familiar with like the OAuth space, like an on behalf of, and like tool scopes, but on like a programmatic level that you can control within the client JavaScript.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty cool. So Google is involved, Microsoft is involved. When I look at the W3C proposal, I guess Amazon gave you time and effort to do it. Is there anything coming from that? Which other players are super excited about that at the moment? Who are you talking to?
Yeah, so it's now like an official web standard. I think it's pretty exciting. There's representatives from many different companies, especially now after Chrome put out that initial thing. It's like it's blown up about 100-fold. But yeah, this WebMCP, as we currently know it, is a combination of many different people's ideas. So Google had script tools, and then the guys from Microsoft had, I forget what the name they were working on. It was like Agent Context. I was working on WebMCP, and then we all got together and started working on this proposal, which became known as WebMCP, which is the syntax you know today. So yeah, there's many players involved. It has support. I think the Mozilla guys are getting involved now too. But there seems to be strong support across the aisle from many different companies. It's a problem that a lot of people feel needs to be solved. So
yeah, it felt like giving away ownership of the web to agents and to AI, and it felt weird because we optimized for humans for a long time, and then basically out of a sudden we now say this thing's being scraped and we wanted to do something. What came to me yesterday, and I bounced that off you earlier, I find it very cool that there's a lot of reuse there. If I already do automated testing, if I already have a CI/CD that actually says like, okay, here's the test cases that my interface needs to do, or if I do test-driven development where I say like, okay, this button when clicked should give something like that in that format. These scripts can now easily be repurposed just for an agent. So you don't actually have to put some extra effort in. You could just convert them. Could we even think about like conversion tools for that? Because there are standards for testing scripts, right?
Yeah, conversion tools being like converting your playwright script into a WebMCP automation. Is that, sorry,
Yeah.
do you mind reframing that question?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like the
Yeah.
efforts that we have right now, like the playwright or puppeteer scripts that people have already, or the testing environment that they work in, that there shouldn't syntactically be a hard step to actually say like, okay, and now it's the instruction for the agent rather than for the human to simulate.
Yeah, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. I almost see those as like orthogonal, but slightly different. Like playwright is, it waits for DOM selectors and things like this, and then it does automations that way. Whereas WebMCP is like almost like a deeper level of integration with calling tools. The client, this thing that's calling list tools and call tools, could live in many different places. It could be the Chrome DevTools MCP local client that's doing this, but it's almost abstracting the DOM away over this layer and re-representing it as JSON schemas rather than HTML. Do you see that as do you see people using these like JSON schemas to automate the DOM rather than like programmatically?
No, I don't think the DOM automation is just a tool in this level. What I thought about more was the test scripts that people write, saying like, this is the search page. If you enter this amount, this should come back. And this is exactly the things that you should put in those attributes if you want to put them on the form. So that's what I mean in terms of reusing, not the interaction with the browser or the scripting of the browser, because that's something that's not necessary anymore. That's the great thing about it. We don't need to simulate those clicks anymore. But the input and output, what is getting in and what is being expected, that's something that people can reuse from their testing scripts rather than just like from the instructions that go into the whatever system they use Puppeteer or Playwright. So
Yeah,
that's something that I
absolutely.
was wondering about. The other thing, of course, would be like, how do we get people that even don't touch their HTML, like that they just write React components and create 10,000 diffs without labels and without proper input fields? How do we get those to actually put that extra information in? I guess on the programmatic level, then, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's why there's an imperative and a declarative API. I don't think React developers, especially SPA developers, are probably too interested in the declarative side of things, I think. But having high-level hooks and things like this for the React side of things, React developers are more, in my experience, more familiar with this operating on React state and things like that, which is because it's just JavaScript. You can easily provide easy programmatic access to your state via WebMCP that way. But yeah.
What was the coolest implementations you've seen far? What got you really excited where people actually started using it for something that you hadn't thought of that might be surprising for you? Was there something that just like, hey, I didn't know it can do that?
Yeah, I mean, oh man, when I put out MCPB, which was like my original implementation of WebMCP, maybe 8 months ago now, I put it out at Hacker News and I got a lot of people really excited about it. Then, and a couple people had written websites with it. Like I think the biggest ones were people had written like WordPress plugins and Shopify plugins for WebMCP, meaning that all of the pages that inherit, these plugins or these like building blocks they included with their website had these already access to this thing. So it was just code reuse at this level, which was great. And then people building games with it, like people that didn't necessarily know how to build an agent, but they knew how to write fun JavaScript games or vibe code them and things like that. And this would let them communicate with a pre-built agent, which is living in the sidebar, right? That's one of the great things about WebMCPs. You can become an agentic application without needing to maintain your own agent. I think those would be the two things, tic-tac-toe. And in fact, the guy from one of the guys from Chrome, Devrel, he wrote a maze, and I don't know, I think he'll probably put it out by the time this is released, but it's an entire maze game that is you talk to it, you just tell it, hey, agent, finish the maze, and the agent will keep calling the up, down, left, and right tools until it completes the maze. So yeah, things like that.
Oh wow, that was like at whiteboard interview questions, and now we get agents in our sidebar to do that for us. It feels it feels weird. I mean, the tic-tac-toe. I just thought of War Games, the movie, out of a sudden. Like like okay, there's never an end to it. That shouldn't be the thing. But it's interesting to see that I love the idea that Shopify and WordPress people are on it, because that's the kind of multiplication that we need. I remember when I worked on Yahoo Local, which was like a local search engine for that, and we put like microformats in there with 18 million addresses out of a sudden marked up that way with like one build. And this is the kind of multiplication that you want for that kind of stuff. The thing right now, what we use it for is actually you simulate an agent in the sidebar in the browser extension to play with it. Do you see any of the agentic frameworks out there already embracing it as well, rather than just embracing their normal scrape and copy way?
Yeah, so this is actually something we're talking about right now. For my opinion, I have talked to a lot of these people, people like BrowserBase and some of the guys from things like Copilot Kit and Tambo, if you've heard of it, and like Assistant UI. They all want to support the standard. But there's some debate whether or not we'll even expose like an in-page API for listing and calling tools, or whether it'll live these the only consumers will expose, or the extension in first page or first party browser agent level. But I think we're winning this debate, so I think we're going to expose tools in page, although it's still very early spec. But yes, people will absolutely support this. Browser, the biggest issues with browser automation providers right now is reliability, and so they're excited about this from that standpoint. A lot of people want to be scraped, and the nice thing about WebMCP tools is you can inject this syntax onto pages that maybe a lot of people have don't have access to their like code or things like this. So WebMCP is great for providing like kind of a harness that tells the agent, a third-party agent, how to interact with the page in a more deterministic way.
Mm-hmm. It feels still a weird thing that could have been done with an HTTP header as well, like basically on an HTTP level directly without even rendering the page and saying like, okay, if you tell me you're an agent, if you tell me you're a bot, here's the information that you came for, and not like, here's an HTML document with some extra JavaScript and some extra attributes to actually make you convert that kind of thing as well. Much like Cloudflare now has this Markdown service, which now gives every HTML page as a Markdown thing instead. But it seems like this is a race we cannot win anymore, because the agents don't want to be seen as just bots. They actually want to get the same access as humans, right?
Yeah, exactly. And people, they want to automate things, right? They want to just have their intents be fulfilled by an agent. Like, I think if there's like one direction we're seeing things going, it's people doing or delegating more and more of their tasks to these agents. Yeah, it is an interesting question. I think you're right. The best way, probably long term, would be for these agents to be able to talk to these remotes or third-party MCP servers or HTTP endpoints themselves. But that, from an authorization perspective, that infrastructure just doesn't exist yet. The amount of APIs that are well documented or support OAuth is extremely small. And then, or if there are APIs, maybe they're very expensive. But if you already have your data and if you're okay with the agent using your logged in session, is that your right to allow an agent to delegate or to do things on your behalf? I think it's an interesting question to think about, which is why for this initial pass for WebMCP, it's a human in the loop sort of thing. So targeting remote browser automation is not something that we're currently looking to support. We expect the human to be there looking at the page while they're using the agent in the sidebar.
Yeah, because otherwise it might just actually pile a lot of stuff that you don't want to, and like basically gets in a loop and starts hallucinating things. You never know that. In terms of browser support, I mean, Chromium is on board, which means Microsoft is as well. And I guess the big story, of course, is like, unless Safari supports it, people are not going to embrace it on mobile. Are there any signs from Apple or from the WebKit team already about this as well?
I haven't talked to anyone from the WebKit team. This is one of these things that like WebMCP is so early, and it's got a little bit more attention than it expected for something this early in the process. I think we just started getting guys from Mozilla showing up. So yeah, I don't, the answer is to be determined. We haven't heard one way or another whether they're looking to support this standard or not. Although I think based on the I don't know, resounding yes we've gotten from the community about the standard, I think there's likely to be support.
I mean, there's this philosophical part of it as well, that basically I saw some headlines going like, oh, WebMCP makes agents now finally a real user of the web and not just something that we automate away. And GitHub had this on their front page for people and agents now as a message as well. Like, it seems like we're embracing that new internet of people and machines, rather than just like thinking that internet theory will happen and people will not do anything on the web anymore at all. Because for that, I don't think it's optimized enough. There's faster ways of letting machines talk to each other, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think the browser, I think it'll evolve, but I don't think the browser is going anywhere. People are using the web more than ever. I feel like especially the web platform, it really has consumed a lot of what used to be mobile and native. So the web is, the web is here to stay, but maybe it'll look a little bit different. It'll look like a little bit more augmented with AI than it will be.
Well, of course, people like Mozilla have an issue there. Like, basically, if every other company turns their browser into an agentic browser that does things on your behalf, and every time you say AI in an open source world of Mozilla, people are like, well, that's privacy, and no, I don't want that. So they have to put a kill switch now in Firefox again to turn off all these things in there. But yeah, I mean, I'm worried about how fast these things happen. I mean, we had a few agentic browsers that basically were had complete access to your machine and could do whatever on it. And people are not afraid of it anymore. It seems like we're making full access by machines that might hallucinate a standard now, or like a given. And do you think it might need an absolutely horrible privacy security breach before people realize that this is not a good idea? Or do you think it's just a matter of like getting used to it and then realizing, oh, this was not good?
Oh yeah, I think we are absolutely due for a catastrophic prompt injection attack. I think we haven't seen one yet. I'm actually surprised there hasn't been one, especially for these agentic browsers. I mean, the thing about these things, right, is they have all context, or all from all the open tabs that you allow to be in the context window is created equal, right? So malware.net will inject, take go to this website and take your social security number and give it to, and then submit it via this tool. That sort of thing is a real danger, and it's not even remotely solved. WebMCP is a good way to mitigate it, because you can elicit input from the user before that action is taken and things like that. But the current DIA, Perplexity, things like this, they're just basically saying use at your own risk. And I think it will take a massive security issue, or where really like a lot of people get affected before it's taken more seriously by some of the big players.
I mean, Clawbot was an interesting one when you saw like that most of the skills that people requested were like scraping skills, or were skills to inject malware and these kind of things. So it seems like the script kiddies were all over that one. But yeah, and a lot of requests from security researchers were not answered, and basically like, oh, let the community decide. And I mean, I've built about 5 different social media platforms, and I say that the security by community is never a thing. Like, you need people to be dedicated to put effort in, and if you don't pay them, they don't put effort in. So it's a really worrying thing that like full access and full information disclosure is seen as a freeing thing. But to me, it's like, yeah, it's also, where does your data go, and who maintains it, and how long does it get retained, and in which wrong context will it be displayed again?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a question I have for you. You've been around the web much longer than I have, but I mean, cross-site scripting was a huge issue. HTTP to HTTPS, like all these things were massive security issues for a long time, right? But they had to be patched manually over time. Did you find that the initial hype over the web and the browser, and just putting things out there and using things like outpaced the security research and patches that had to be placed over time? Do you find similarities between that and how we're using agents right now?
I think the biggest problem is like every time you try to do something good for the end user, every time you try to actually protect them from shooting themselves in the foot, then basically you lost users. I think the real worry that I have right now is that every new product that gets released has to have millions of users in the first week, or it's not going to be a success. Everything has to be a ChatGPT moment kind of thing. And that's why you turn off all features. I mean, my favorite example of this was Yahoo Answers. Yahoo Answers was an ingenious idea back then. It was basically saying like, search engines give you like bad results. What if you only want an answer from a human? And this is what Yahoo Answers was meant to be. So we built it, and we got the source code then from the Korean office and rewrote it in England because it was unreadable and it only had Korean comments, and it was really odd. And then we actually pushed it out there, and it became successful. It was really, really good. And then we like, okay, and now we need to make money with it. So let's turn off all security settings, and let's turn off all quality settings. And then it became the joke that it became to be. It became a meme in itself with the how is Babby born and these kind of things. And it got run over by bots and scammers and SEO people. And that basically is the thing. I think what we need to fix is that growth thing. So I'm very happy that WebMCP is such a success at the moment. I'm actually happy it's not a piece of software you had to download, because then you would have had to, if you had a VC coming in to make that thing. So a lot of security things happened luckily under the hood, like HTTPS as a standard now. I mean, you cannot actually most of the APIs on the web only work over HTTPS anymore. Like when I worked on Firefox OS, we did access to the hardware on everything in JavaScript. And that without HTTPS, that was an absolute nightmare. And we we realized that everything we opened, everything we standardized was used by malware creators first. Web USB for fingerprinting, Web MIDI for fingerprinting, and we didn't have any normal users that requested that kind of stuff. We basically just had it there, and they're like, okay. And I'm kind of worried that we have the same thing there. Like, rather than I don't want to say that developers of AI tools don't care about security. I think they do. But the push towards that everything has to have an exponential growth in the first 3 days is a thing that really worries me, because that means people will always go the path of least resistance, and that is allowing end users to do whatever.
Yeah, for sure. I have seen this. I've spent some time in around venture capitalist and SF, and there's very much a drive to provide the solution to browser automation right now, or provide the solution to computer use. And I would say that people are very much in the camp, or still, and they're just coming out of it, that machine learning is going to save us from all of these things. It'll save us from the security issues with models. We're going to use AI to solve prompt injection, or protect from prompt injection attacks. We're going to use AI to teach models how to use the computer better. But I think we're seeing, and if I had to guess what a trend of 2026 would be like things like WebMCP, which are open primitives that are built into the tools we use, that everyone can use to make these things better, rather than one person trying to capture the entire problem with their proprietary technology that the VC is breathing down their neck to say, okay, solve this and then make all the money and leave everyone else in the dust, right? But yeah, I think that's not a solution anyone's really coming to. So
that's why I'm very happy that it's open, that what you and others now started to contribute to, because it is open. It is in the open, and it's possible to actually see it that way. The security by obscurity has always been a horrible idea. And every time I got an open source project that was, I call it farm sourcing. When a company doesn't want to support a product anymore, they say they send it to the open source farm where it's going to get fed and have a lovely life. So in essence, they don't want the magical community to come up and maintain it for them. And the amount of companies that actually wrote closed code only for a few people, iterated super fast, didn't care about quality, and then throw it out as open source, and are confused that people don't jump on it and fix those 10,000 bugs that are actually still in there. It's staggering how many times that happens, when it's just like, oh, we're not shutting it down, we're open sourcing it, and you're like, yeah, you're shutting it down. Let's just admit that's the thing.
For sure.
But then we are in a world where people vibe code, although the vibe code hype is going away a bit as well. I don't see many people talking about it as much, because it feels so super wasteful. I tried a few things and then basically said, okay, this is great. Now can you make the buttons bluer or something? And it started writing the whole thing from scratch. It started importing new NPM modules, and you're like, so instead of iteratively making it better, a lot of really dumb vibe coding environments just start from scratch every single time you change one of the parameters. And if I did that as a developer, my manager would have hit me, because I spent far too much time on that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think the vibe coding thing is, I've been doing a lot of agent-driven development, which is, I guess the fancy term for vibe coding these days. And there are definitely upsides and downsides. But if I think of these these websites you go to and say, build me a website, they're very similar to low-code tools, and they fall into the same camps, right? So once you'll hit a wall where it'll be like, okay, this is outgrown what I can do with a few prompts, or outgrown what I can do by just editing. I need to do something that requires true, a programmer involved that can actually architect this thing. We're seeing that. I think when you talk about the vibe coding hangover, is that we're seeing many applications that are just purely vibe coded, and nobody knows how they work. And every time you ask the model to add a new feature or fix something, it breaks something else. And yeah.
Well, it feels like when Bootstrap came out, and every website was one header image, three columns, and an action bar, an action button, and basically there is a whole backlash of the creative community of saying AI makes you boring, because it actually it takes the well-trodden path of what things should look like, And basically, like, if you want to stand out with your thing, that's probably not what you want to use. But again, going to market as quickly as possible seems to be the main goal here. Ship, rather than just ship something that you thought of before.
Yeah, exactly.
Now,
And go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I agree. I think, if I think about this, a vibe coded website, I think of, this header section, a bunch of slightly rounded cards, a beat SPA, and and they, this is like, there's thousands of these landing pages out here, and they all look identical. They have slightly different text content, but yeah, I think you're right. Like, taste is going to be something that, is going to be very much a in demand skill coming up here, like knowing how to make a website that doesn't look like every other vibe coded website, which I think is something that people will look for these days.
What's the same with like AI aided coding? I mean, the skill of a senior engineer was always to review other people's code and assess the quality and find the dangers and teach people not to write them that way any longer. And that skill is going down the hierarchy a lot earlier now. Like, as a junior developer, you're probably going to review more code than you write code these days. But then again, you got the whole movement of people like, don't ever look at the code. It's just something that the machine came up with. Your prompt and your specs are much more important than the code that comes out at the end, which is great. But writing a good spec is a skill that took me about 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah. Yep. Yeah. I think that was something that I really I learned to do well at Amazon, which was good timing. But yeah, if you work at especially with a large team of developers in a non-startup space, like writing high-level designs and PRDs, like this is a skill that might be more important than knowing syntax in today's day and age. Agreed. Yeah.
Well, especially what I love about vibe coding is that going from one language to another, I've seen a lot of people just port like C++ to Rust and these kind of things with AI generated code, and that was possible. And even things like using WebAssembly, putting C++ code into the browser without thinking about it, and machine does the conversion for you. I think this is an interesting, if probably not performance-wise the best idea, but at least it's possible. And I think this is the kind of stuff that you shouldn't have written as a human anyways. Now, you went all in on the MCP thing. Now, what is the MCPB business that you're doing? You left Amazon, you did your own thing. What is your company doing right now?
Yeah, that's a good question. So when it all I put it on Hacker News, and like I got a lot of people using it right away, and I was like, okay, well, this is exciting. And I really did feel like this was going to be the future. And so I just kind of left, and I didn't really have a plan when I left originally. I just wanted to be on the precipice of, I saw the field changing. I wanted to, experiment with all these new tools, things like this, and really work on MCPB. So I've been working on that a while, working with the W3C on standardizing. And then recently I've been working on with some companies, which is probably going to be released in a few weeks. But it's an embedded agent that can call WebMCP tools on the page. And the idea is that it's just like a custom element that you drop in, and all of the, under one IDP, all of the internal applications that embed this agent get one conversation history. It's built on open standards, WebMCP, MCP, OpenID Connect, and OAuth. All these, it's the idea is for it to be as pluggable as possible. So that's kind of what I've been working on in the background, and that's what MCP is doing right now, other than engaging in standards work and with the MCP and WebMCP communities.
Well, what's your monetization model then? Like, how do you keep the lights burning at home?
Yeah, well, the extension brings in some money, and then I've been doing a lot of been building kind of these sort of extensions for companies that there's a lot of people with lots of internal applications that want to that have this issue of this. How do I orchestrate across my internal applications? Here's an extension that can do so. Your teams put these WebMCP tools on the page, and then now your extension can call those tools. And so yeah, that's what I've been doing in the meantime. While I've been kind of doing that consulting work while working on this project that's currently called UseChar. But yeah, I'll maybe put it in the show notes if people are interested in taking a look.
That's cool. I mean, that's also a sensible way of doing it. I'm an angel investor in a company that did like years ago a an image to code conversion, like proper, like Figma to React or whatever. And turns out the golden path was basically talking to enterprise companies because they have lots of stuff internally that needs conversion like that. Whereas like an end user out there will probably just use the Figma file and do something with it and then sell that thing. So the need that we have in a lot of like enterprise environments that have thousands and thousands of apps running in their company is something to actually make sure that you actually, yeah, you make a living with the cool thing that you want to support. So that's a clever way of doing it and a more sustainable way of doing it, I guess. And it's fun that enterprises that used to be these like black holes that you couldn't access with a moat in front of it and two knights now actually are very open to these open standards. And again, I guess decentralization helps there with you. Like it's
Yeah,
supported by
yeah.
big companies rather than just my idea.
Exactly. Yeah, that was the thing that went from like me staying at Amazon. Because when I wrote MCPP, I was like, this is a cool thing that one guy wrote, right? To being like a standard that's supported by everyone's agreeing that this is what the syntax will look like. If MCPP goes away next tomorrow, you can still port that to whatever other extension or browser or whoever supports the WebMCP spec. Which I think in a day and age where development's changing every day, and new libraries are existing and dying within a week. I think people are, so happy to have things that primitives they can build on that they feel like will be there for longer than something tied to one startup.
Yeah, and the whole idea of building something that is to go away doesn't work either. I mean, we made ARIA as as an example to make things more accessible, to give like access until the operating systems allow us to do that, and it never happened. And just people put like thousands of ARIA roles on everything because they don't even understand what a button is supposed to be. So the whole like just make it a filler and the polyfill idea of like we're writing something and then when the browser supports it, we're going to remove that code. Nobody removes that code, and we still have lots and lots of old code out there. So that's one
Yeah.
issue that I found there. But
What do you
yeah,
think that'll be the equivalent will be for WebMCP for that sort of thing? What, do you think, do you foresee from your experience anything like the air example you just gave that WebMCP will fall into?
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if the extensions, the form extensions, become a known standard. Like that would be like to here's a way to actually mark up a form to be agentic access rather than like human access, and both of them, and we can extend that further. I mean, forms are a mess. I mean, the input element could be 27 different things. It could be a date, it could be a color picker, it could be anything. So I hope that sooner or later the HTML spec will actually get an extension to actually support these things rather than just having to know it. And when I talked to the Google people last week, one thing that I always wanted as well is that IDE then or Visual Studio Code would then actually automate that thing for me and autocomplete it when I start typing it. And unless it's standardized, that autocompletion will not come in, or I have to install yet another extension to VS Code, and that's not a good way of doing it. So I would be surprised if WebMCP became a standard. When I worked at Microsoft, I was part of the AI on device group as well, on the
Oh,
WCC
nice.
group.
Okay. Yeah.
And then we talked about the Onyx file format and these kind of things to have those models run on machine, and that is already getting there. And I find that fascinating, especially weirdly enough on iOS. There's like huge things you can do on an iPhone nowadays. I mean, it costs as much as a desktop used to cost, so that's not surprising. But I hope that this will also become more of this more standardized thing because, as I said to the Google people as well, like Canary, when I saw the numbers that people used, downloaded it, like, and then turned on that extra thing, that was in the hundreds, not in the millions, like the rest of the Chrome usage was. So that's like we provide this for the geeks and for the people who are already on our side. Like we don't provide it for the end users out there. So hopefully somebody will get massive support. Automatic just announced today that they have an AI agent now running in WordPress.com
Oh,
to
nice.
actually generate designs for you with an NLP thing, like make this button blue and put a header image and these kind of things. So I wouldn't be surprised if the big CMS and frameworks out there would support this in the future, just because it makes sense, and it's also a security safety feature. That's the other thing. It's an access feature, but it's also a security feature, as you said before, because you define the things that an agent can do, rather than just hoping the agent doesn't do everything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Programmatic versus, vibes based. Don't do this, right? Which I think is something we need more of. Yeah.
Cool. So, what's your message to the people out there of our listeners? Like, what should they get started with to try things out? Like, what is the thing that got? I mean, you're excited about it, obviously, but what is the thing that you showed people where they're like, oh, wow, I want to do this as well? What can people look at to play with?
Well, one thing, I mean, you can go to, I'm currently rewriting it to match the current spec, but if you want to use the MTBB extension and go to a website called WebMCP.sh, it's like a kitchen sink of, an existing dashboard that you can play around with, that, the model, everything the user can do, the human can do, filter tables, 3D visualizations. We have like a graph GIS, all this sort of thing. You just ask the model to play around with it, and it will do so. I think it's a great example. But yeah, or if, pull down Canary, I guess it's in beta, and, enable the Chrome flags to play with the Chrome Teams extension, and just put it so on your page. I think if you're a website owner and you've been wanting to interact or, engage with the agentic space or the AI space, but you don't want to, learn how to build an agent or things like this, I think this is a great opportunity for you just to say, here, write some tools in my JavaScript, mark up some HTML. Congratulations, now you're an AI application. You can be an AI company, right? And I think that's something that I recommend people do. Just engage with the space and start testing it out on your existing websites, things like this.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks very much for this. We're going to be in September in America, and we're going to have a congress there with 10,000 developers coming. Do you want to speak?
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to.
All right, then let's
Thanks,
get you
Chris.
sorted on that one. And and before that, I have to work with the Berlin one, which is 15,000 people. So it's interesting, but we'll see what else. Meeting people, not agents or bots. That's an interesting one.
Yeah, no bot speakers yet. Maybe that'll be 2027.
Oh dear. Well, but I guess in virtual conferences, some of them might be avatars already. We don't know it yet.
Oh gosh, yeah. Well, we've already lost music to AI. Let's not lose that.
And movies and background and oh god, yeah. No, well, there will be a backlash. You cannot take creativity from people. They will actually do things. I mean, when everything was like very boy band music and stuff, then Nirvana happened, and something like that will happen in the coding space probably as well.
I'm ready for it. As somebody that's even doing a startup in AI, I'm ready for a little bit of backlash. So. Yeah.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Well, thanks very much. This was Alex Nahas from Now MCPB. Play with WebMCP, play with that, and it's open standards. You can contribute. Please tell people what you want to have and show what you can do with it, and it will get better. That was Coffee with Developers with Alex Nahas, and we're going to see you in the next edition. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Chris.